Hi you guys! In today's video I am talking about the eyeshadow palette you should buy if you can only afford one. It was almost exactly a year ago that I purchased this travel bag by Kara Sport, which I reviewed in detail in a video I will link here on the screen for you, and this has been my daily makeup sort of go bag ever since. And when I first loaded this bag up, I decided to see if I could go for a year only using makeup products that I could fit in this bag. Some of those products got changed out as I decided over time that there were things that I didn't like, but there is one eyeshadow palette that I have used all year long. In a recent video, I demoed for you guys the new Laura Mercier Caviar Cream Shadows that came in the sticks. I will link that video here for you guys to go and check out. And it wasn't long after I recorded that video that I realized that was the first time I had purchased new eyeshadow in a year. And that to me was just more proof than anything else that this is the one eyeshadow palette that you should buy if you are only looking to purchase one. And that palette is none other than the Dior Backstage Eye Palette. Mine is in the shade Cool Neutrals. They also came in Warm Neutrals and Amber Neutrals, both of which are beautiful, but I had not tried Cool Neutrals in quite some time, and I wanted to see how they would work with my skin and hair coloring, and I loved it. So whichever one you go with, Cool, Warm, or Amber Neutrals, the best thing about this palette is that there are no crazy color combinations that you need to overthink. I think back to the days when I would have entire Z palettes filled with little individual colors, individual shades, and I would be putting 6 or 7 different eyeshadow colors on my eye just for a normal work day. Even if I would buy a pre-assembled palette like this one, I often found that there was just like a corner of the palette that I would end up using, and there would either be very dark colors or very random bright colors that I would never use. I might have a palette of beautiful neutrals that came with like a bright blue and a bright pink in there, and I never really knew what to do with them. Color combinations are pre-thought for you here in the sense that all of these colors can easily be mixed and matched. And I can tell you right now, there isn't a single shade in these palettes that you won't use. So right off the bat, it's a better use of your money to buy a 9 shadow palette, or technically 8 because this one up in the corner is a primer, than a palette that has 30 shadows that you're only gonna use 8 of them anyway. In this palette, you do have mattes and shimmers covered as well. So if you're somebody who kind of swings both ways on that one, like myself, you don't have to worry about adding in extra shadows. This will cover both. And as already mentioned, in addition to the fact that there's no random colors that you have to figure out how to combine, all of the shades in each of these palettes is perfectly coordinated. You have light options, mid-tone options, shimmer options, and some deeper hues as well. As opposed to when you get those really large palettes that have like over 24 eyeshadows, and there are 6 really dark ones and 6 mid shades and a bunch of transition shades. You don't always know which ones are going to mix and match well together. So some days your eyeshadow might come out looking great, and other days it might be a real struggle. Because there are only 8 choices in here and they are all perfectly coordinated to work with one another, again, you cannot go wrong. Which brings me to my next point. This eyeshadow palette has proven to offer foolproof application. No matter what combination I have used, no matter how I have applied it, which brush I have used, I've always been able to get it to blend out. I've always been able to get it to the level of intensity that I prefer. I've been able to go for a very light sort of no makeup look and more dramatic eyeshadow looks like I have on right now, which I will show you guys how I achieved this using this palette here in just a second. But that blendability, that foolproof application, those perfectly coordinated colors, all of that goes to the quality of these eyeshadows. They are a little bit more expensive. Of course, you're paying a little bit for the Dior name, but again, I would rather pay for eyeshadows that are going to work every single time without fail, repeatably, over the course of an entire year. And I would rather pay for that than something where I'm a little bit less certain about which colors to mix and match. Some of the shadows blend out really well, but other ones don't, so I start to stay away from those. There is none of that, no guesswork, no nervousness approaching my eye makeup when I use this palette. So if you've watched my videos over the course of the past year, My eye makeup has always been this palette. So as I said, I generally don't go for really deep and intense looks. This eyeshadow look is probably the most intense that I've worn in a while, but I wanted to demonstrate for you that it is possible since I generally err on the more natural nude eye look. So I'm going to cut to a different portion of the video that I shot right before this where I was actually putting this eyeshadow on. I'm going to show you the brushes that I used. I'm going to show you how I applied it. I ended up using about half of the colors in here just to give you an idea of how I've been using them over the course of the past year. So let's cut to that. Enjoy. Hi everyone. So as part of tonight's video, I was going to go ahead and use the Dior Backstage palette and do my eyeshadow with you guys to show you how I typically apply it and how easy it is and why this one has become my favorite. So just to start out, in the top corner of each of the Backstage palettes, they include an eye primer, which is super handy, and as you can see, I've definitely been using that. So I generally just pat that gently onto the eyelid using my ring finger, which if you don't already know this, the reason the ring finger is the favored applicator for eye makeup and eye creams is because it has I don't want to say like fat content, but it's the cushiest of all of your fingertips. It's a good eye primer. I wouldn't say that it is on par with something like the Urban Decay eyeshadow primers, but as far as something that is already in the palette, it's travel friendly, and also has kind of like a concealing effect. It sort of evened out my eyelids, kind of covered up my blue veins that show through a little bit, so I'm starting with a nice even base. I have just 3 eyeshadow brushes that I use with this palette, and sometimes I don't even use all 3. It just depends on how intense of a look I'm going for. So I have one that is slightly on the fluffier side, one that is not fluffy, but a little bit more dense for a little bit more detail work, and one that is just a fine tip that I use for detail work on my eyelid and then to add color underneath my eye. So I start with the fluffy brush, and usually I will go in with some combination of the 2 soft pinks and one of the 2 shimmery shades. So for tonight, let's go ahead and do this guy here, and I'll blend him with some of this more silvery shade in the top center. And since I have very hooded deep set eyes, I kind of start out here and use like the straight line method, going back and forth into where my crease actually is and then out and over, trying to sort of draw where my makeup would go if I had more eyelid to work with. The beauty of this method that I have found over the course of the past year is that it never matters which of these shades I go in with in combination here. I'm always able to achieve a really nice, well-blended, natural look. And then I just add the deeper colors to intensify depending on how intense of a look I want. So once I've got like a little bit of a base going, I might wipe my brush off a little bit and then start adding more of the silver tone, more of the shimmer tone that I picked with one of the 2 mid-tones in the palette, which are these 2 right here. If I'm going for a darker look, I start moving into this guy before getting into these accent colors here. So let's just go ahead and do that tonight. I'll keep using this shimmer shade and I'll go into this sort of darker mid-tone here. And I just go back over the same area that I was already working in, darkening it up. What I hope is translating onto camera is that this is not anything too precise, but it's still coming together beautifully, and I've been able to make it do that repeatably for the past year. So it really is a pretty foolproof palette, as much as other palettes claim to be. These colors really are foolproof mix and match. So once I have a little bit of a dark sort of shape going, I want to start darkening up this outer bit here and dragging it down to the underlash. So I'm going to keep going in with this color here because this is a slightly denser brush, and I'm going to be able to get a little bit more defined. And then what I'll start doing is mixing the mid-tone that we've been using with one of these 2 darker colors here. I think tonight I'll go for the slightly more wine-colored one here, as opposed to, I guess, what I think of as more the cooler, even cooler purple shade there. And once I kind of have the shape going that I want, I'll start pulling that darker color in about a third of the way across the lid. And then to sort of blend it out, I'll go back with the fluffy brush and that first pink shade that we were using, the lightest of them, just a little bit on the brush, and I go over the edges to sort of push it out. Now for the most part, this is about as dramatic as I take it with this palette, but if I wanted to, I would go in with my detail brush and keep picking up that dark shade and really deepening it up along the lash line and into the outer corner to create an even deeper shadow than what I had going before. And then to finish off, I stick with the light color and the shimmery shade that I was using, and I'll just dust a little bit across the top right by my brow, or if I feel like I'm not getting quite the look that I want, I will go in with a little bit on the fingertip and press that in along the top. So now on this eye, I just went in with the same process, but I stopped short of adding the darkest two shades here. So on a normal day, and if you've watched my videos at all over the course of the past year, this is pretty much the look that you've been seeing on me. This goes on to show just how much I can intensify it just by adding one of these two shades out of the same palette. So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna make these two match, and we're gonna get back to the video. So that about wraps it up, you guys. The Dior Backstage Eye palette for me in cool neutrals has become my be-all end-all eyeshadow palette. It has made it so that I haven't had to purchase new eyeshadow palettes in the course of the past year, nor have I even been tempted to, because I continue to create beautiful looks with the colors in this palette, and I continue to like how my makeup looks every day, and that's ultimately what we want with our beauty products. So I will link these guys in the description box below for you to go to check out. I will also, if you're interested, link the Kara Sport bag if they're still available, and that will be it. So thank you so much for watching. I'm glad that you're here, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.